Star Wars 7x7, episode 2555. Well, Wave 2 has officially reached the shores of booksellers online and in person. That would be Wave 2 of the High Republic. But how is it actually doing? You know, I was asked about this a while ago, or at least challenged about it, to be perfectly honest. And let's talk about how it's actually performing at the cash register, the virtual cash register, as it were. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So, yesterday of course I did the what's coming in the month of July and had done it a few days in advance, and thankfully it didn't become outdated in the few days in between the recording and the release, which was a relief. And so now here we are a couple of days after the launch of The Rising Storm and Race to Crash Point Tower, which are getting good solid reviews so far, which is great. And the thing that I wanted to check in about, because I've been kind of looking at the Amazon sales ranks for The Rising Storm and wondering how it's doing, because I didn't check that for Light of the Jedi. And yes, I'm leaning toward being more specifically interested in the adult novel situation versus the younger age novel situation with Race to Crash Point Tower, which is targeted at middle grade readers and is just, it's not going to sell as much as Light of the Jedi did or as The Rising Storm is going to. That's just, the nature of the way things work, generally speaking. But it is the likes of Light of the Jedi or The Rising Storm that are kind of the bellwether for how they are doing. And so I looked back a while ago and discovered that Light of the Jedi was on the New York Times bestseller list for 4 weeks, and I think, that doesn't tell us necessarily everything we need to know, except that, it was a best-selling book. There's usually 15 books on that bestseller list, and it was right on there. Now, we are too early for that for The Rising Storm, but indicators so far are generally very good. And with the comics, I went, and looked at that as well. There had been a lot of stories about the fact that the first issue of the High Republic from Marvel went into like a 5th printing, which is kind of unheard of, and that wasn't the end of it. Like the 2nd issue in the series went into a 4th printing. 3rd issue was also in multiple printings as well, so that was a good thing to see as well. And then looking at Comixology right now, which is strangely enough an Amazon company, and they deal with digital comic sales and whatnot, and the 6th issue of the High Republic series from Marvel, which is also the first story in the Wave 2 set of stories, that one is a top 5 comic right now on Comixology. And even before we start getting to look at bestseller reports for these new books in Wave 2, something's happened that is also a key indicator that sales for these are going well. And that is the fact that the consumer products division at Disney has released a bunch of merch around the High Republic. I'm not talking about like the tote bag thing or the special edition book thing that had come out to help promote the book release for The Rising Storm. I'm talking about t-shirts and tank tops and hoodies. Like, there's actual clothing that is based on the High Republic that has been released. So even though we're not going to get information about how many copies of The Rising Storm are going to be sold or how many copies Light of the Jedi sells, there's still things that we can kind of back into. And, I looked at it, say, compared to the most recent Thrawn novel that came out, and the Thrawn novel was not on the bestseller list for as long as Light of the Jedi was. Now, you have to take that with a grain of salt, of course, because that also kind of depends on what other books are on the bestseller list at the time. And so, yeah, it's not an apples to apples comparison, but it's certainly a strong indicator for the High Republic books that they are selling well. And also, A Test of Courage got onto the middle grade readers bestseller list, and Into the Dark got onto the young adult bestseller list. So yes, positive indicators for both books and comics all around. And I guess it would be one thing if it was just, them taking the, cover art for each of the books and slapping them on t-shirts and then saying, go, that would have been like, all right, yeah, so they did that and maybe that would be, okay, that's great. But no, they're actually creating original designs for stuff, and it's on their Shop Disney site, it's on the Amazon site, and it's also on Out of Print, a website that sells limited edition stuff as well. So they're creating fresh designs based on the High Republic. They're taking pieces of concept art and rolling it out. They're doing very cool things with it. And that's a very exciting thing, because if the High Republic was not doing well, then it would not have received this kind of tie-in merchandise at all. The fact that the fine folks at Disney and at Lucasfilm are seeing what's happening with the High Republic and are saying, hey, yeah, there's enough interest in this that, hey, let's release some merch and see what happens. Like, I think that's a really good sign. Now, I know there are some Star Wars fans out there who are not necessarily, motivated to check out the High Republic storytelling, and not because of any, weird stuff or anything like that, or any negative stuff, just that, if you're going to invest in this particular realm of storytelling, it's going to take a commitment, right? Because you are getting into a whole new era of Star Wars canon timeline stuff. And so, yeah, that can feel like a commitment when you are diving into that. And so, yeah, if the High Republic isn't your thing, then, that's okay, and that's perfectly fine. I will just say that, it seems like it's here to stay. Like, I guess there was a point in time in which, if the High Republic stories didn't do that well, then there was probably a backup plan somewhere for them to say, okay, we'll figure out how to wrap this up in, 2 or 3 waves and, not go to phase 2 and not go to phase 3 or something like that, and just cut their losses if that needed to be the case. But that's not going to be the case. So if there's any part of you that has been, hesitating on it because you're, not sure that you want to dive in, well, yeah, they're going for the long haul and they are all in. And so far, the stories that they're telling are compelling enough that it's building confidence within Lucasfilm and within Disney to do these new things. So I'd say that that's probably a good sign for you too, if you've been hesitant about exploring these stories, that, hey, maybe this is another reason why you might want to check them out. And if you want to get a feeling for what The Rising Storm is like in a non-spoiler fashion, well, I've got the non-spoiler review that I did last month. That's episode number 2531, so please feel free to check that out. I will be getting in spoiler territory with it soon enough, but if you want to dive into that, you can. And I've also got a lot of High Republic coverage on the podcast as well, and the best place to probably check out some of that, if you haven't checked it out before, is to go to the website sw7x7.com and look in the categories section of the site and look for the High Republic listed in there, and that will have a list of all the episodes that I've done about it, which have been, my fair share, as it were. And so, yeah, that's what I've got for you today on Star Wars 7x7. That is going to do it for today's episode of the show, and it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it. As always, it's the usual one-man show, labor of love here for you, and I'm thrilled to do it every day, and thank you so much for joining me for it. And, of course, as always, may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.